footage we had was actually from holding live events. And so, but that did take a lot of thought, because it's quite easy to have an event and then realize that no one's got any decent photos from it and no one's taking any decent footage from it, or someone's just taking it on a phone and holding the phone the wrong way up so you can't use it. And so we went to the effort and sort of the expense of getting someone to film it properly. And that live event, we actually made sort of money from it because enough people turned up, but it would have paid for itself 10 times over simply on the social media footage that we got, and from the fact that having a crowd of people all clapping and cheering, more people saw that on social media than attended. And I think over 40,000 people saw one of the videos we did that was filmed at the live event. And there are only about 200 people or maybe 150 people up there. So the reach from the event was massive. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now. But the summary is really think about what message you're trying to convey. And if you've got a sort of vision, creating the impression of momentum, it means that everything you do is amplified massively. I'll finish there.
Can I just say thank you very much to our four speakers. We've gone all the way from grassroots to Westminster via sort of Mayor of London and a councillor there. So that's top to bottom. See what a really good snapshot. Do I have any questions from Alan or Les?
One of the questions I had was the question of how you generate content. Now, I'm part of the Rushmore local party, which is in the main towns of which are Aldershot and Farnborough. One of the things that we struggle with is generating content, actually having stuff that can be fed into social media. And we found that it seems to take a lot of effort, a lot of time to actually consistently generate stuff, and to stop the challenge has been to stop the momentum just sliding away and dropping down to nothing again. So any tips or tricks for generating content in a regular way and creating that sense of momentum, please?
I'll go Holly and then Les.
So I can't remember exactly who said this to me, but so I think somebody in the team, before I started getting really into it, was just, if you put it on a Facebook, if you put it on a focus leaflet, you can make a Facebook post out of it. If you put it in an email, you can make a Facebook post out of it. So really, it's just taking, it can even be the same stuff because it will reach different people and you'll be phrasing it in a different way. So yeah, that's a good way to go, I think.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Les?
I've done quite a bit of this for Roy Horrobin in the general election campaign. Am I all right to share the screen? I'll show you, give you an example of how I do it.
Please. There you go. I've made you the host, so you should be able to do that.
Okay. Well, this is just a random post, but it's a reasonable one. I have a template which has the Lib Dems and the Roy Horrobin bit at the bottom, Liberal Democrats at the top, and put out of Roy in the corner. And I just insert a short statement from Roy and a couple of pictures somewhere on the page. It only takes about 10 minutes to do. It's quite effective. People recognise it straight away because they're consistent, and it seems to work really well. And as a gauge of, as a gauge of the success in the general election campaign, Roy stood in the previous election and didn't use any digital campaigning. In the most recent election, using £800 worth of Facebook posting, we reached we had 260,000 impressions. We generated hundreds of conversations. Roy more than doubled the number of votes he got, and more importantly, saved us 500 quid on the deposit, which is the first time for quite a few years. The Grimsby part of our constituency lost interest and didn't do any digital campaigning. they got about the same as they did last time and lost the deposit. So I know it's not scientific, but it's, I think it's a good vindication of using social media for this type of campaign.
Absolutely. I
Well
think
done.
a good amount of money well spent. Bobby, I saw a hand go up. Can I jump to you?
Yeah, just on that content point, I'm going to come back to 2 points I made earlier. One is about you shouldn't really be sinking loads of capacity and trying to generate content. It shouldn't be that difficult. So I would just say maybe set your bar for what content is a little lower, because I've worked with people in the past who, whenever they want to write a blog, they think it has to be like a Times opinion piece, when actually you could whack down a few hundred words and that's enough to get your point across online. People consume content quite quickly. So maybe just think about what that threshold is for the content you're generating. And then in third, in what I just said there is the integrated strategy I said again. Like, if you're looking for content, I'd find the easiest way is to just post 200 words on your website about something. It could be whatever has happened in the local community, and then your candidate says, and 2 sentences from them, and that's enough. And then you can start posting that link on your social media. The advantage of doing that is then, rather than people just engaging with your social content, they're now being diverted to your website, but hopefully they're also going to be able to sign up to get involved in the campaign or donate or do other types of actions as well. So literally 100 words on the website can be the starting basis for content generation.
Great, thank you.
I think you're on mute, Matt.
There we are. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Do you have any last questions? I've one that was submitted by someone who couldn't make the talk, who asked, if you could only have one digital medium, which would you prefer to use and why? And that's, I suppose, to open to any of the, would you prefer to have Facebook, Instagram individually, or perhaps email, which you can also own?
I think for social media, if you had to choose one, Facebook is the biggest and has the best reach. And for politics, it works well because of the type of interaction and discussions and shares. It's probably the most efficient. But one thing to bear in mind is that people who are under 25 years old are more likely to have an Instagram account than a Facebook account. And a lot of them, only the ones that do have Facebook, are only using it to keep in touch with their parents. So if you do something on Facebook and Facebook alone, and it is by far the biggest, and you probably are connecting with more politically engaged people, but you would be potentially cutting out a huge number of people, of young people, if you don't cross post onto Instagram. And then, like you mentioned before, Bobby, you're exactly right. I mean, I found Twitter was not helpful in engaging volunteers or voters, but is very helpful in getting press coverage and communicating with sort of journalists. And within Lib Dems, actually, you get a lot of Lib Dems follow you and you follow them, and so you can kind of it's a good way of having sort of inter-party and political discussions, but it is very much a bubble. And I don't think I ever met a single voter or farmer or anyone who was communicating, via Twitter.
No, we were yet to meet one of the farming constituents to come to us via Twitter or Instagram, I think. However, your Instagram page does very well. The vets, Instagram was made for vets, I do believe.
Made for animals, wasn't it?
Yes, it was made for animals.
So I've got over 20,000 followers, and it did actually work well for. So I kept it fairly unpolitical, but did put the occasional political post and story up, and they did get really good engagement when I did it. I didn't want to lose a load of followers by suddenly becoming a massive politician, and people had, gone on for puppy photos originally, but putting the occasional one in did work. Really did increase engagement. It was definitely worth having Instagram going, and you're doing really well with your Instagram account for that garden. Freya, that's really good. It's really good work, and it's really important.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Can I go to Ted, and then was it Alan who had a hand up as well?
No, not me.
Well, let's start with Ted.
Thanks, Matthew. So I'm not sure who wants to pick this up. My question, we're Hammersmith and Fulham, no councillors, no MP, obviously, and one digital officer who has a full-time job. And so I'm wondering how it works best between campaigning and awards that's going to be coming up, and one person can't do everything for that. So how do you link that up? If I, as a potential candidate, or someone else wants to do more of this stuff on social media, do we tie it in with the Hammersmith and Fulham website and Instagram and Twitter feed, or do we just sort of ignore that? And how do we reconcile that?
So I personally missed the start of your question. It was reconcile. Can you just re-explain? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So for our local party website, we have a website. We have a Facebook page. We have Twitter, and I think maybe Instagram. And yet, if we're campaigning in wards for the council elections, then that could be very different. So, for example, if I'm campaigning in a ward in my part of the borough, it's going to be completely uninteresting to someone in another part of the borough. Do we try to reconcile the local party website and communications with the ward campaigning, or do we just not worry about that?
I might jump in myself just to answer. Firstly, you're a team, the councillors, MP candidates, all the way up, including the Mayor of London candidate, Siobhan Benito herself. You are all a team in London. We are setting up ward pages. Holly mentioned setting up community area pages. So a ward, so there is a ward in Hull called Drypool. Drypool exists in the Doomsday Book of, the 1100s, but it doesn't. But nobody knows it exists as an area today. It's a complete nonsense. So we've set up Garden Village, which has Facebook. We interact in the local Facebook pages, but then on the Hull citywide Facebook page, we talk about Hull-wide news. But we also use some national news. So the content is appropriate to the audience and the scale of the audience. I don't know what, but you are also a team. So the news that will interest, a local issue may interest a wider audience as well. But the successes of Lib Dems in one area, or also the successes of Lib Dems in another. I'll go Les and then Holly. And I think we may start wrapping it up, seeing as it's now 9 to noon. Les and then Holly.
Yeah, I've had quite a bit of success in using software called Hootsuite for posting simultaneously to more than one site. It did cause me problems. I had a Twitter account for about 15 years, and they eventually suspended it indefinitely for breaching their terms and conditions. I don't know specifically what they were, but I think it was due to the fact that I was using this software to send identical messages to different accounts. And similarly on Facebook, during the European Movement campaign, I was simultaneously posting to 12 different area Facebook pages. And I did get a bit of problem with Facebook. I kept getting banned for 24 hours. So I had to go onto a different page and do the same thing from there. I don't see that there's a problem with posting to your local Lib Dem site. The problem is Labour people and Brexit type people would never visit it. If you're wanting to put your message out to people who aren't friends, you have to go out into the wider world and have what's apparently a politically neutral page that has these directed posts on, and paying to boost them so they go out to people at random is the ideal way of reaching people who probably never receive your message.
Yeah. Can I jump to Holly? And thanks, Les. That's a very good point about neutral territory. Over to you, Holly.
Just a quick point about the last question. I do think actually sometimes there's even if people are on let's say the other side of the city, if you've got like a main page or even sometimes a ward page, actually sharing what somebody else is doing in a completely different part of the area, actually as an example of what your team can do and what people can expect to see in your area, say if they vote you in, I think that is actually still relevant and people are still interested in it. We've had some success doing that.
Brilliant. I'm going to jump to Bobby. I see a hand there.
Yeah, just a very quick point about the sort of personal accounts and the party accounts as well, and think about the roles that they can play. So the party accounts can get away with saying things about your candidates that maybe people feel comfortable doing in terms of like bigging them up and stuff. So sometimes use your sort of like party account to say, hey, look how brilliant this person is, and the sort of stuff that people that, well, because they're people a bit more humble about talking about themselves or talking about others. So use your party account to sort of amplify things and say things that maybe you can't get people to say.
Almost a bit like the aide who follows the candidate around, which yeah, no, that sounds familiar to what I was doing for Danny and Cornwall. You know, you can big someone else up and say when the conversation has to end, when maybe the candidate or someone can't do. And sort of, I think talking on sort of ending conversations, I might really just start wrapping it up